Hello, my name's Michael Carroll and welcome to our DVD on group supervision. This video was shot in Melbourne in March 2012 with a group of 120 people on a 2-day course on group supervision, even though your discerning eye has noticed we're in Lavender Bay in Sydney. The course itself was 8 1.5-hour sessions. So what's included on this DVD are my introductory talks to each of those 8 sessions, or at least some of them, as well as the lead in to the exercises that the groups did following up that introduction. What's missing from this, of course, is that you don't get any involvement in the actual group discussion itself, and you don't get any kind of feedback from the group. What was different about this training was that the participants actually learned group supervision by doing group supervision. They were in a group going through the processes a group would go through in setting up, looking at the dynamics, looking at the stages, looking at the issues emerged in the group. So they learned by doing. So that's it. You can use this DVD as a kind of a basis for your training. If you have a group you're watching it with, all the better. I hope you enjoy it, and if you have any feedback, do contact us on the address on the label of the DVD. Thank you very much.
I want now just to begin us to start thinking about the theme of the next 2 days, which is group supervision. And to get that underway, I'm just going to sort of look at some of the learning objectives that I'll put up here as our way of beginning and thinking about what we cover during this time. We want to look at, understand what group supervision is. So how does group supervision differ from individual supervision, one-to-one supervision? We want to have a little look at that to begin with. And then we want to sort of look at 4 types of group supervision. So there'll be 4 specific types that you have to choose from when you're doing group supervision. They can change over time, they may not. And the 4 types we'll be looking at is authoritative supervision, where the supervisor supervises individuals in the group with everybody else listening in. So it's very much a one-to-one supervision, but in a group setting. So the rest of the group learn from listening in to other people's work, but they don't contribute. And that's quite a strong form of supervision that sometimes takes place, often with trainees. The second type of supervision we'll be looking at is what we call participative supervision, where there is led by a supervisor, but other people pitch in, give their contributions, their thoughts, their ideas. So it's not just the supervisor who provides some input and some thoughts, it's also the participants in the group. The third type of supervision we'll be looking at is called cooperative supervision. And cooperative supervision is where the supervisor, who's the leader, takes a little step back and becomes more of a consultant to the group and lets people in the group supervise each other. So it's almost as if the supervisor is a mentor, mentoring those in the group who are learning not to do just to do supervision, but to be supervisors. That's a kind of a slightly different one than the second one, participative. Fourth type of supervision we'll be looking at is peer supervision, where there's no leader. There's no designated leader, and the group is a leader itself, and people are at the same level, and so they get on and work together, being both supervisors and supervisees. I'll say a little bit more about each of those in turn later on as you're deciding what kind of group you'd like yours to be and work with. Now clearly, this type of group also works in different settings, so you can have an open group where people come and join openly, they don't know each other, say 3 or 4 people with a supervisor, and it's what we call an open group supervision. You can have a team supervision where people belong to the same team and then are invited by the supervisor in from outside the team to supervise them. And I do that in 1 or 2 instances. I've got a team of management consultants, 5 of them who work as a company, and I go and supervise their work once a month. I see each of them individually for an hour, and then I have group supervision with them all together, the 5 of them all together for an hour and a half. So that's a day's supervision that I provide for them. And they're a team, so part of the process they work on in supervision is them as a team, as well as the supervision. So you've open groups, you've team, then you have groups that belong to the same organisation but are not a team. So you can have people from different parts of the organisation who have come together to be supervised by an internal supervisor or an external supervisor, and the team develops from that, but they're not an existing team working. There's a thing called intervision that's very popular in mainland Europe, particularly Germany and Holland and Switzerland. And it's a form of supervision where people from different professions in the same organisation come together to be supervised. So in a hospital you could have a social worker, a doctor and a nurse, and they would come and be supervised by probably an external supervisor, and they call that inter-supervision. It's an interesting form of supervision to use because it's cross-professional, which brings another dynamic within it and work within it. You have the trainee groups, and some of you running programs in psychotherapy, psychology, etc. Sometimes have small groups for trainees doing their work, and that gives another aspect too, because you're not only doing supervision, you're building in an evaluation process into that, whereby you're actually assessing where people are and possibly making reports to their training course. So an evaluative process comes in there as well. So that's just a kind of overview of the kinds of possible groups, the types of group we'll be working with, and then the context within which the group comes together, or the participants in the group. So we'll be looking at that. Obviously we're going to learn how to set up, maintain and terminate a group supervision contract or arrangement. That's the administrative or organisational aspect of group. How do you go about setting it up so that it's effective and efficient? How do you look to who participates in it? How do you contract for it? How do you maintain it when it's working? How do you keep an eye on the processes, the individuals, the relationships, the communication, all those aspects so it's at a healthy level, so it doesn't become a dysfunctional group? How do you as leader maintain the group, look after it? And then at the end, how do you complete it? How do you bring it to closure? How do you sort of end the group? And within that you'll have a number of things you may have to deal with. People included in the group, people excluded from the group, people leaving the group, people joining the group. Those sorts of issues sometimes emerge here. So we look at those and begin to see how we can manage those issues within the group setting. We want to have a little look at the stages that groups go through. I mean, there are some fairly well-defined stages that groups go through and organisations go through, and just having an eye on those and understanding those will give you insights into the behaviour that takes place, because behaviour very often differs when people are at different stages of the group process. So we'll sort of outline some models of developmental group processes and see how they impact on the individual behaviours. We want to look at some of the dynamics in the group, understanding them and make appropriate interventions. Clearly, one of the big differences in group supervision over individual supervision is the group dynamics. They arise, they're there anyway. Group processes happen. Part of our job as supervisors of leaders of groups is to be aware of group dynamics and to be able to make some sense of them, and then to be able to sort of deal with them so that they don't interfere with learning.